Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. One of these days I'm going to get caught slightly dancing and jigging to that beat and leave it a bit late to stop. But today is hopefully was not that day. I've decided to steer course slightly in the next few episodes, and we're going through some groups of people on some topics which I think are interesting and relevant to the industry and to the communities abroad. And community is a great word to use. So today we're going to talk about cybersecurity communities. And I've got the leaders, founders of three of the best that I think exist in the world. And I've been privileged to be a part of and be within many of them. And I want to ask some questions about how we build effective communities, what is an effective community, and do we actually need them all together? So let me bring on Jason Cenamor from the CISO Society, Brian Seamons from CISO, and Randy Potts from CISO XC in Dallas. And let's start the conversation. Hi, gents. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate your time.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
I will let you all introduce yourself in an order. And I always ask the same three questions. And as watched the previous episode, you know, of your hero, your hobby, and the biggest risk you ever took in life. If we go Brian, then Jason, then Randy, and then we'll roll with some questions.
Oh, man. I might need to be reminded of the questions. But so I'm Brian Seamons. I am the president or founder of CISO. It's a local group of security leaders here in the Salt Lake, Utah area. And, we founded it back in 2017. It's just been a thriving community and have a bunch of fun events that we do throughout the year. And then we have some monthly events that we do. So great community and strong experience. So.
And then your hero, your hobby, and the biggest risk you ever took.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I guess that's easy. So hero, I'm going to have to say my father, which is probably a pretty common one.
It's a common answer.
Yeah, either that or Jesus. So one of the two. So
also a common answer. I've had that 3 times at this point.
Let's see. My hobby. I love to water ski. It's kind of a dying sport, but I love to slalom water ski. It's one of my favorite things to do. So it gets me out in the sun, get to be out in a boat. Utah is not necessarily the most lengthy season, but still a lot of fun. And then my biggest risk was going into a profession that I basically despise, and that's sales. So
you do have a slightly self-loathing relationship to sales. I've known you for anyone watching. I've known Brian for a long time. I actually worked with my NCC group where he was the guy that sold things that then I had to try and work out how to actually do and deliver. So I'm more than aware of his relationship with himself. Looking in the mirror must be hard. Jason, we'll go on to you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Jake. Jason Cenamor, founder of the CISO Society, which as it stands today is a community of security leaders, just over 1,500 members, most of whom are here in the US, but starting to grow around the world through various referrals, et cetera, and it's been running since September 2021. Amazing group, like just love seeing it, and really feel privileged to have the opportunity to actually manage it. When it comes to heroes, hobbies, and risks, so hero, I'll take a little bit of a left field one here. My hero is Larry David, more specifically Larry David. His character in Curb Your Enthusiasm, I wish I could live my life walking through and just complaining and attacking people as I see fit. My hobbies have changed as I've grown up a little bit. One thing I have a passion for at the moment is making pizza randomly. My team members all know this. They joke about this. Whenever I travel around, the first thing I'm looking at is what pizza spots can I try. It's a bit of a strange one, but something I'm enjoying. And then biggest risk, it's a good one, Brian. For an English person who is typically quite risk averse, I do seem to take some stupid risks every now and then. I would say, sales and things, definitely. But probably moving to the US was probably the biggest risk. Never knew what was going to happen. 13 years later, I'm still here. So that seemed to have paid off, at least I think.
And then on pizzas, are you an uni or a different brand? And then are you gas or are you wood?
So, okay, I did go through the whole thing where I bought a pizza oven in COVID. That was an uni.
We all did.
Got rid of that. I've now got my eyes set on a Gosney, which is actually a UK brand. Okay. I'd love to cook on wood. My friends have pizza ovens where we can cook on wood, and I enjoy going around there and doing that. But unfortunately, I'm gas. And throughout the winter in Chicago, I'm stuck to conventional ovens. So I have to get a little bit creative. And I'm trying to perfect my Detroit style pizza at the moment. So that's been
What's
fun.
Detroit pizza?
It's like deep but fluffy. It's kind of like a focaccia type of thing, but smaller and like rich in flavor. And they're amazing. But again, in conventional oven, it's easy, so that's why I'm kind of on that train at the moment.
We could go down a pizza conversation, I'm sure. But anyway, we'll move on. Randy.
Yes. Hey, I'm Randy Potts. I'm one of the co-founders of CISO XC. We actually started kind of around the time Jason did, August 21. We did the same thing. So me and Jason and I definitely bounced a lot of ideas off of each other and kind of watched our communities grow together, which is really cool. So, and honestly, we're a group of CISOs. So I'm a CISO by day and organize these events. I think collaboration is huge, just because we work in a field where there aren't 100% answers. And so I think it's really important that we talk with each other. And so, yeah, anything we can do to kind of enable that, I'm 100% on board. And then, hero, usually I always go with Alan Turing. I mean, man, the stuff he went through and the things he did, and just like, I don't think we'd be where we are today without him. And he definitely got the raw end of the stick and still kind of tried to persevere through it. And then hobbies, lately, mountain biking. We do a lot of mountain biking, kind of have a CISO XC mountain bike chat going on as well. And we do it quite often. A risk, less serious is probably I started mountain biking in the dark. And so, it's kind of funny on the trail. It was like when I did it during the day, I went, what the hell was I thinking? So, just starting mountain biking was a bit of a risk. But on like a serious note, I started my career, actually skipped college graduation and went to a war zone. So I was a defense contractor and kind of set the tone for my whole career. So paid off.
Wow. Wow. Don't really know where to go with that one. Well, so let me tell you why I've got you three on, because I do also with a lot of communities, and then let me ask some questions that I think are relevant. So you're here for different reasons, effectively. Jason, the CISO Society, noise is a bad word, so I'll say the CISO Society is the loudest community that I know, right? The Slack channel is constantly going. Like Chatham House rule, it should almost be renamed to the Chatham House channel, because it's literally constantly going with stuff which is useful and people actually talking about genuine issues and real findings and real thoughts. Like, it's probably the most interactive, loudest, the most useful community I sit inside. Like, and the sheer volume. There's like 1,500 nearly in there. I always say to someone, everyone with the AE asks me and says, "Do you know this person?" I'm like, I don't know them, but I can guarantee they're in the CISO Society. Like, here you go. Like, they always will be, right? Brian, you're here because SLCISO for me is probably the greatest epitome of how communities can drive real meaningful relationships. Right? SLCISO feels like a family. It feels closer than just a community. It feels like a really united group. And the example I always use when people ask me is, I met Matt Hillary through SLCISO, who's still a very good friend of mine to this day, even though we're like almost fiercely competitive as companies. But our relationship goes deeper because we've known each other for a lot longer, and the relationship is more meaningful because it came from that place of real, like, traditional relationship and real community build. And Randy, one thing you said is CISO XC, I think is great at is I think it is a peer network in the truest sense. I've been to talks, you've got people in there from like Tim Brown at SolarWinds and Joey Sullivan from Uber, and had like really meaningful conversations that people want to hear behind closed doors. But also what you guys do in terms of giving back so much money to charities is a fantastic representation of what I think community should be. So those are the three reasons you're independently here, people listening, why I picked these three out of other communities and why I think they're the most meaningful ones. But then I want to start with kind of flipping the narrative. A lot of people have a negative view of community. A lot of people look at it and go, it's a way for vendors to pay for sporting events and dinners, and you then just to pretend that's why you're there. How fair is that? How much of that really exists? How much of that is complete nonsense? How much of that is actually kind of a part of the kind of toxic side of community? I'll go with you first, Jason.
Great question to start with. So you're right. And I think it kind of depends, right? Like, it's fair because naturally, there is a place for vendors to play in the security community. When we started the CISO Society, it's funny, and Randy might remember this as a fairly early member, We were like, no vendors allowed, no vendors, no vendors, no vendors, no vendors, right? I came from a world of events where everything is driven by vendors, absolutely everything. And so I was really kind of against it. Like, no, this is for the CISOs. We're going to do this for them. They're going to dictate the terms. And it was actually the members who started showing me that it's not that they dislike vendors. It's often the way they're afforded the ability to engage with vendors. That is where there's a disconnect. And it comes because there are a lot of poor actors out there, unfortunately, who run event companies, and they will just do whatever a vendor asks once they sign a check, like literally whatever they ask. Okay. And so I think when it comes to these kind of dinners and all that kind of stuff, and vendors essentially paying to get access to communities, I think it's fair if it's done appropriately. So like some of the steps that we took as a society, right, was about, we're not going to let vendors dictate where we do things, how we do things, number one. What environment are they afforded the ability to actually then engage with members? So if you're doing a dinner, does a CISO really want to spend 3 hours at night talking about cloud security, SSO, or do they want to just get to know each other and have relationships, right? So little things like that. And when it comes to exposure of product, how do they want to be exposed to product? Do we do a case study session where a vendor has a customer come and actually present how they're using a solution? So it's just the way in which that kind of format is created, or that environment is created, that I think is key. It's okay for companies to have vendors sponsoring events. It's absolutely okay. But you need to make sure that what you're doing provides value to the CISO first and foremost, and then work your way that way. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I like it, Brian. I think it's a strong part of the SLC's community. There's obviously vendor-sponsored dinners, right? But they very rarely engage in a sales motion. And in fact, the conversation where I assume they choose the direction of the topic of conversation, it never feels like it's going the way the vendor probably ideally wants it to go. It just goes off topic wildly. So like, how do you firstly get vendors on board and bought into the fact they might well not get a chance to pitch their product, but also more important, like, how do you get them continuing to re-engage? You have lots of people who come back, they've sat in a room and I've gone, we had a fantastic conversation as CISOs, we loved it, but I don't know if we talked about anything they wanted to know. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that was the basis of the foundation of what we were trying to build in the beginning. And we realized that we needed a community, but we also needed a way to pay for it. And so we took kind of what Jason was saying. We realized that we need to serve the community first, the CISOs first, but then you have two customers, right? You've got both the members of the group, and then you've also got your sponsors, and you've got to find a balance that works well for both. And essentially what we've done is we've been very explicit in the expectations of what the sponsors are going to get. They're going to get to be in a room with the people that they've been trying to talk with for years, right? And that normally is enough for them to recognize that the value is worth that. Because even our pre-conversation, right? We were talking about conferences, talking about the big one later this month, right? What a show that is, and it's all sponsor driven, right? And with that being sponsor driven, it isn't genuinely, it's not fulfilling the need of the security leaders or even the security community as a whole. And so we've taken that in a different approach and said, look, why don't you work on the relationship part of it first, and then worry about your product? Because you're going to have that time with them after you've gained a level of respect and relationship.
Yeah, Randy, pivot on the question slightly. I guess to Brian's point, which I think any CISO, and you're probably the same as me, if you wanted to go to RSA, you could have 4 dinners, 4 lunches, like 6 evening meals, and go to like every sports game under the sun every night. And I'm often conscious. I respond to the vendors. I'm not in the market for what you want. Like, if you want me to come and ramble at the table, I'll talk about like secure coding and type of why this is relevant, but I'm not going to pay your bill. Like, what do you think is important? Like, when you're looking at kind of who's in the room, like, is it important that you've got people who are talking, or is it important that you've got the people that meet the kind of ICP of a vendor who might be paying to be in that room?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the balance comes in, right? So and honestly, that's the trick, right? I mean, if you think about marketing in general, there's someone who probably needs your product, but trying to figure out who that is.
Yeah.
And there's value in getting all those people around, right? Like if I have a AppSec project or a data governance project, man, I want to talk to the other people. And so that's the thing we really are, want to do is, hey, please bring your CISO customer who solved the problem, and then try to get them talking to other people who have that problem, where, hey, this is a valid solution and it might work for you too. And so that's the way you try to balance that. But God, it's so hard, right? Because you don't all just walk around with like a big flag that says, hey, I just solved the data governance problem, you know? And
Yeah.
so it's so I mean, it's a constant battle, and honestly, just trying to talk and engage with as many people, and then try to get the right people matched up. And sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. I mean, we're doing it right now. We have a conference coming up, and just trying to get the right people in panels and roundtables and all that, like who should be where. That's the biggest balancing act right there. And if you get it right, it, like Brian said, both customers are happy, because it's like, oh man, we got to talk about my topic as the sponsor, and then all the attendees are walking away going, man, I actually learned something really useful.
I think that last bit's the key bit. Like I said, I end up paneling and speaking at a lot of conferences that we don't sponsor. And I think it's just because I say controversial things. So it's remotely somewhat engaging, and therefore people want to be there, but like they might be in the ISP, they might not be. Ladies and gentlemen, next question. Vendor CISOs. I've worn this leopard belt for a number of years now, and it's got me banned and removed from multiple communities because, as I always say, if you like something, it's not wrong to say why you like it, right? Like it's like if you buy a Ferrari, you like the Ferrari. You tell people you like your Ferrari, right? If you work for a company that you believe in, then you also tell people I think my product's good, right? So open season, you can slate anyone, me included, like vendor CISOs, good or bad for communities. I think we're the loudest voices usually in the community, but we're also often the risk. Anyone, put your hands and go.
Like, in my opinion, depends on the individual, depends on the experience of the CISO. Like we actively have always said vendors, CISOs are allowed inside the CISO Society, because just because you go and work for a vendor doesn't mean you lose all your experience, your knowledge, your ability to help others. But you can easily spot somebody who's been a practitioner and is now a CISO at a vendor, or somebody who's just called themselves a CISO to come across less threatening, right?
Yeah.
You can easily spot that. Yeah. So that's the rule you kind of run. But this has come up inside the CISO Society a few times. Hey, why are vendors in here? Look, they have a place in the ecosystem just like anyone else. As long as you enforce strict, no solicitation policies, right? And for the most part, the community kind of take that upon themselves to enforce. That's what I find in society. I don't have to reach out a lot of the time. Sometimes I do, but most of the time another CISO will be the one that pings or says to someone, that's not cool. And they've got a place. Like, I also personally think that it's valuable for vendors to see how practitioners, right? And I'll just say practitioner for people who aren't working for a vendor, right? Of course, you're still a practitioner, but how practitioners are talking about the products in the space. Because naturally, in my opinion, that helps vendors improve their product, their service, which does better for everybody. So that's, I feel, a valid reason why vendors should be part of the conversation at all times, providing they know how to approach the conversation correctly.
Yeah, maybe that latter statement is the true one. Brian, what are your thoughts? You've got a few quite vocal vendor CISOs in your community. This is a great topic. I've got, how many have we got? We've got 4 or 5 that are fairly
big companies too
in our group, and it makes it challenging. This might need to be beeped out, but we have a no asshat rule, which means that, essentially if they've crossed that line, they start to get on this list and they could eventually be removed. You have to have those hard conversations. The no solicitation piece is big and important. However, I love what Jason was saying, because that's the reality of it. You get, I'll keep names and organizations quiet, but the reality of it is we have one that's very active in the group, participates significantly, but runs the security program for a security company. And that security company, or that individual, is able to take what he learns from the group and then disseminates it down to his sales force, which then brings value to his team and his organization. So to help understand what the cumulative opinion and approach to what a cybersecurity leader is dealing with and going through, and how to approach them, applicably, is invaluable to that organization. So, the 4 or 5 orgs that we have that are represented within our group, I know they bring a huge amount of value to the group, but then also back to their organization. So, but I heard a different question though, Jake. So you asked about field CISOs. That's a whole rabbit hole that I would love to go down.
Oh, let's go down it, because I've been there and it drove me nuts. When I was field CISO anecdotes before Esther left and I became the full CISO, the amount of times I was asked what my sales background was, I was like, I'm a CISO. I just happen to be a marketing CISO because I'm good at speaking. Like,
yeah.
Go on, let's go, Brian. Take the conversation.
Oh, I don't know if I want to go there. That's a tough one. That's, I mean, they're obviously hired as a sales role, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're
and some are quoted, some aren't.
Oh yeah. So they're taking on that experience that they've had for the last plus years or whatever it is. And now they're out evangelizing their product. That's an interesting role. I mean, I've got mine at the organization that I work for. They bring value to the table, but sometimes that isn't relevant. So I don't know. That's a rabbit hole I don't think I dare go down, actually. Yeah. So I want to hear about it though.
Let's go. Randy, Jason, follow down. Let's go on the rabbit hole.
I think it's interesting, right? Because there's this paradigm. If you think of, really, I think about it like, are you a technical person or are you a salesperson? Which on my kind of two ends of the spectrum is like, lock me in a basement and just give me toys, to I need to be out with people trying to push my ideas, And so I think as a CISO, you kind of are on that paradigm of like, maybe you were technical, maybe you weren't, but you're more in a sales role, because I am constantly trying to sell my security program to our clients, right? So we
and up, right, to the board, right? You're trying to get budgeted. Yeah.
I gotta sell stuff internally. I gotta sell stuff externally. And so making that little jump to a field CISO, I see how it happens, and I see how those people might go, hey, this isn't for me, and go back to being a regular practitioner CISO person. So it really is just this continuing. And Brian, I like what you said with like the no asshat rule, because we have this even with the non-field vendor CISO, where it's like, just don't be a jerk, And I mean, there are people who will just be jerks and blast people. And it's like, don't, because it makes you look horrible. Eventually we might punt you from the group, that sort of thing.
I'm going to come back to that. Jason, any comments on the field CISO or any of that kind of stuff before I go into the asshole route?
I mean, the field CISO thing's a tricky one as well. I will always question, but a CISO at a vendor, like it's just it's removing a word. Remove the word field, and all of a sudden now it's not threatening. Add the word field, and it is. So, like it depends on what the vendor's wanting from that person. Like if we take, if we can name names, Ira at Psy. Mm-hmm. Ira is not going to go out there and pitch Psy anywhere. That is not Ira's MO at all. Yeah. Ira is there because I know about security. I'm going to educate you on security. And he's actually doing the thing that I think more vendors need to do, which is something that Anecdotes, I'll say, has done very well as well. You should be the thought leaders in your space. You should be the experts. If someone is trying to buy your product, then you should know more about that than that person does. Yeah. Therefore, get the people in who understand it. That's how a CISO evangelizes. It's not just talking about the space that their vendor operates in. It's actual education on why this is important and educating the people on your expertise, right? So anyway, it's a weird one. But
so Jake, I want to ask Jason a question. So in that sense, when does it become someone on a soapbox that you're being preached to of stuff you already know? Like that drives me insane. Like
it does.
Tell me about the threat landscape. Seriously, I've been doing. That's what I do all day. Can you really tell me about it?
I'll tell you, Brian. A good example of this, right? So we do a startup showcase program in the society. It was all designed like, how do we help CISOs navigate the noisy startup ecosystem, and obviously give startups the ability to come in and raise awareness without having to refinance their business to get a trade show spot at RSA, right? So how do we do that? And naturally, founders come from different backgrounds. Sometimes CISOs start companies as well. And the ones who typically haven't done as well in our startup showcase are the CISO founded companies, because they come in and pontificate until the cows come in. And they basically spend 10 minutes explaining to CISOs what the problem is with cloud security. And it's like, yeah, we know, show us how you solve it. So it's really funny to see how some folks try and maybe go a little bit too far to one side of the spectrum on the educational side. Because ultimately, what does a CISO want to know about a vendor is, how do you solve the problem? I don't care what the problem is, how do you solve it, right? And it's normally the former CISOs who tend to go a little bit too close to the sun.
Interesting. I like that.
I think that's what, coming back to some of all those comments around like thought leadership and around like pontification, I think that's what makes a good vendor and or field CISO, in my opinion, is someone who actually has the technical competency Randy talked about, the love of toys, has the sales capability, but can just speak very directly and very acutely and quickly. Like, here's the problem. I don't need to tell what it is because you know it exists. Here's how we solve it. Here's what we don't do. Like, I think that for me is like the kind of sweet spot of where like you're actually useful. And in a community sense, like I do it when people talk about GLC and the CISO Society and SLC. So like I'll say, here's what we're really good at. If your company's this size, we're great. If you're not, we're probably not the right tool for you, right? It's not going to work. If you've not got a GLC team, go and buy Drada Vanta Secure Frame. Like we work for enterprises. And I think that's like, it's having that kind of acuteness around it. Let's go back. I've got a few questions. I don't want to go too long. So the asshole list, I don't really care. It's my channel, so I can say what I want. Where does it draw the line on like freedom of speech versus this stuff? So like, and the reason I ask that is not because I want to get on like a political rant. It's because I want to go down that route of actually saying, if you think about breaches historically, you go on LinkedIn and everyone jumps on, or in private communities, everyone's there saying, well, I would have missed this. Like, how the hell did they miss that? Like, this is really obvious. Like, what an idiot. And you see it sometimes in the communities, right? You start to see people saying, like, someone ask a question and people are just jumping on, like, you're an idiot, basically, in paraphrased. Like, at what point is that fine because it's discourse and it's debate? And at what point is that now just being an asshole? Like, where's the line and how do you deal with that in a community? Especially when we've got a Slack group or WhatsApp thread or something.
I think self-awareness is a big piece of that, right? And just there are those people who just don't have it. And so it's like, I mean, I will be a complete jerk to people, but then, you know, take a breather, don't do it again, know when you did it, maybe apologize if you went too far. I mean, I literally had a call with HR. We were investigation on an employee and I literally hung up the phone. I was just like, this is a complete waste of my time. Just fired this person, hung up the phone. And so then literally Monday, I just called back. I was like, yeah, sorry, that was really horrible of me. I'm sorry. I'm busy. I'm sorry I was a jerk, And so, I mean, that it's just having that self-awareness, right? And just some people just don't have it. And so like, yeah, you can be a jerk. You can pile, hey, how'd you miss this? How'd you screw this up? But then, hopefully somebody chimes in and goes, hey guys, let's back off. Or, hey, this could have happened. That could have happened, that sort of thing.
I love you just admitted an HR complaint and violation live on YouTube.
100%, man. It happens. I mean, it's all the time, where it's just like people lose patience, right? And it's that ability to just have accountability for it and just step up and just be like, hey, it happens,
Yeah, I'm with you. Jason, Brian, anything to add?
Self-reflection's huge. Like that honestly is probably the core to not being an asset. It's just, you've got to recognize how you're perceived. And then I think you've got the masses behind you, right? Your question about freedom of speech, there will be a certain point that if someone's pontificating about their belief or whatever it is that they feel strongly about, everybody will be able to either get a message and understand it and roll, and accept it, or it'll continually be rejected. And I think that's a governor in and of itself, right? Where if it never resonates with anyone, then it's obviously they're just pushing on something that's, self-agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Jason, anything more?
I mean, yeah, it's ultimately who runs the rules on who's an asshole. It's you. You're the one that kind of decides if you like or don't like someone, or don't like or don't like what someone says. So as like a community kind of steward, so to speak, I kind of feel that you have to let the community to a certain extent self-govern that. The self-awareness is so important, but some people just don't have it, so they're going to like sound off anyway, and then they just start shouting into a vacuum. So I don't feel like as a community head, I govern it and decide that was an asshole thing to say and that wasn't. And you kind of let people figure out themselves. The challenge is, then people maybe retreat into themselves and they don't want to contribute more because, they can sense that people are just turning a little bit of a blind eye to them maybe. But it's a funny one. You see it sometimes and you're just like, what What was in your coffee this morning that made you want to do that?
You see some out of character, don't you? You see some occasions where I see them and go, I know that guy. Like, what happened this morning? Right. No pontification, one statement. What makes a bad community? Like, what makes this not work? Brian, what's the one way to make a bad community?
Lose your values, your principles. What created it in the first place? When you start falling off of those, if you get too heavy on sponsor, you get too heavy, appeasing them, that's going to destroy the community. I think the other piece is, and I think you touched on this in the very beginning, Jake. It's one thing I think is acutely important is the reality of trust. If you don't have trust in that community, you're not going to get the outcomes that you're looking for on almost every aspect.
Jason.
Yeah, that nailed it. Like, trust is so important to the community. I think what makes a bad community, two things. So to Brian's point, deviating away from the original purpose. And in the CISO Society, we've flown a little bit too close to the sun sometimes. And going back to the whole thing about, vendors sponsoring events, you need to find a way, and Brian mentioned it earlier, you need to find a way to still keep the community growing and evolving by funding it, right? You can't do it for free. But ones that go too hard on that, and that's also in direct kind of correlation to the other piece that I think is a bad community, is when people start it with the intention to be able to sell to that community. So I've had a lot of vendors over the time reach out and go, how did you grow a 1,000, now 1,500 person group? I'm like, well, I didn't turn the members into a product. I don't have dollar signs over their heads. I build this, and then naturally all these other things come as a result of giving them value. But you've got to place their value above everything else, and then everything else will fall into place. But as soon as you start compromising, that's when you kind of start going down a path that's very difficult to come back from.
Okay, so stick to your values, Brian. Jason, don't commoditize your product, which effectively is your people. Yep. Randy?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just, listening to your customers, right? Both the sponsors, the attendees, and just, whenever it's funny, from our very first conference, I started a list that's just called things we suck at. And so, when somebody complains, especially somebody who's a friend, that's huge, and I get it all the time. I just had it, our last conference we did, a couple of sponsors who are, friends were like, hey, Randy, there's some things you guys got to fix, and it's like, yeah, okay, we need to fix those things. And I think when you quit listening, you kind of quit caring about that stuff. That's when it starts going downhill.
Okay. Yeah. Care about what people actually want and offer people what they're asking for. Is there any questions I should have asked in this room that I didn't ask?
Personally, so the question I get most,
Go on.
And you kind of touched it, like, how do you create engagement, right? Yeah. So when the CISO Society started, I was warned by the CISOs that kind of joined in the early stages is, okay, so what are you going to do a monthly little meetup session, open up a Slack group. There's 1 million Slack groups. No one uses them. No one posts in them. How are you going to change that, right? How are you going to do it differently? Now, I had experience running events in the past. And through that, I was able to kind of go, well, I know what to do to get people engaged at a physical event. Sometimes you literally need to grab someone and say, you need to meet Jake. Come and meet Jake and talk to him, right? And you need to create that engagement. And so the way to create engagement is by, number one, showing people that if they ask a question, it's not going to be ignored. And then having consistency in how you give them the ability to engage with each other. So, and again, I've made these mistakes in the last 3.5 years. Consistency around when you bring them together, the purpose of bringing them together, the meetups you run, the virtual event, whatever it may be. But there's got to be something consistent. You can't just do things sporadically once and then not do it again, because then people just don't fall into the routine of this is the expectation of the community, right? The CISO Society grew in its engagement because in the early stages, I would literally call the CISO and say, post something in Slack now. And they'd go, what? And I don't know, like, if you met a CISO today, what would you ask them? Okay, cool. And then I'd call the next person and go and answer that post. And they say, well, I don't have an answer. I say, cool, put that. You needed to show people turning up that they can talk and they will get a response, because there's nothing worse than putting yourself out there and then flatline. So, sometimes you have to amplify that. Hey, folks, no one's given an answer to Randy yet. Has anyone got any response for him? Right? That's the key in community, is creating engagement, is consistency, and making sure people know that if they speak, they are going to be heard.
I love that.
Yeah, I like that. I think if there's interesting, the two things you come back to, both of you, or all three of you, is engagement and this concept of kind of not pitching. And as someone who's attended or sponsored events with all of you, like I think that's the one thing you're all very good at, right? Whether it is the CISO events where I've been to, where we've put hats on a table, but I've never like spoke about the product at all unless someone asked me, or the anti-summit stuff, Jason, which I love. Our salespeople came and asked, well, where's the table I'm speaking? I'm like, that's why I like it, because there's no table. Like, that's what I like about this. Or whether it's the monthly dinners, Brian, the consistency of building this engagement where you can talk, the vendor comes with the topic, but you don't talk about the topic. Like the topic goes off topic within the first 30 seconds. I think that's the point of it, right? It's real, and it somehow feels like there's a feeling to it which makes it feel honest and true. And I think that's the key to it. I think they're building this engagement, whether it's your almost early door-to-door sales tactic of getting people to go and talk to each other. But like, I think you're right. Like, that's what makes those channels noisy. Sounds like I said negative, but they're loud. Like SLCISO and CISO Society, both of them, they're constantly on red in mine. Like no matter how often I look, there will be something that's red. I think that's something which is brilliant and real. I might get you all back for a second episode because I think there's more to delve into. But I always finish with the same thing, which is a question from a previous guest, which is completely unrelated to everything. And this one's a real corker. If anyone listens to the it's from the Diary of a CEO podcast. If anyone's ever listened before with Stephen Bartlett, he does this, and I stole it off him. So this question comes from a former guest who said, if you could be any animal, what would you be? Not why, just pick an animal. And what animal would you be? We'll go in reverse order. Randy, Jason, Brian, what animal would you be if you could transform today?
Oh my God, dolphin for sure.
Dolphin. I like it. Yeah, I can understand why. Jason.
A bear.
I like.
Okay. Well, that's very Chicago-esque of you.
I mean, just, solitude, leave me alone. People are scared of me. Go away. Like I said, Larry David's my hero. So I just like, I'm a bear.
I like it. Brian.
I think I'd be a bird. That's got to be so cool to fly around like that with such agility and just move around, like and the perspective, the view.
A specific bird or just any bird?
I'm good with any bird.
Besides
a magpie, I kill them all the time in my backyard.
Which one was that? Sorry,
a magpie.
We don't want to be a magpie then if you're getting shot all the time.
Exactly.
I'd want to be a peregrine falcon because then I think you're the fastest thing on the planet at that point, which would be kind of cool just to say you're the fastest thing on the planet, right? And apparently you can dive fast enough that people can't see you. Or so my son tells me, he's obsessed with peregrine falcons. Cool. Thank you all. I will ask you, you can all send me via LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Slack, whatever, a question for my future guests. I'd love to have it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing. because I think there is problems in the community world. I think there's a lot of people doing this wrong. And I think that you're doing it right. So I appreciate you being there and putting your time and effort into doing something, which I think is valuable and meaningful. And I appreciate being a part of all of your communities. So thank you. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your various days. And we'll speak again soon. If anyone in the background has any questions, wants to join the communities, if you're based near the Dallas for CISO or now various other regions, right? You're going to Atlanta and Chicago.
Austin, Atlanta, Chicago.
Bring out to Randy. If you're in the SL or Salt Lake or wider Utah area, reach out to Brian. If you're global, reach out to Jason via the CISO Society community channel. And if you have any questions, I'm sure they'll all be happy to answer them. So please feel free to get in touch. Thank you all for your time. Thank you everyone for listening. As always, I stand available to be argued with at any point in time. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.